Hi, I'm Brandy McDonald, Arts and Entertainment Writer for the Oklahoman and Oklahoman.com. And I have a very special guest in our studios with us today. It's Oklahoma City award-winning singer-songwriter Casey Clifford.
Hello.
Hi. So you have some exciting news that we've been talking about today, which is your first new album in 8 years.
It's true. I do. It's really exciting, at least for me.
Sure.
So it's a big deal in my little world.
So it's a self-titled album. It's your 7th album, but you're going to go with the self-titled Casey Clifford this time. So talk a little bit about why this is your self-titled album and why we're finally getting it after 8 years.
Right. Well, in terms of the self-titling, there was a point in the studio where one of the players asked me, "What do you call? Do you have a title? What are you calling it, Casey?" And I said, "I think I'm going to self-title it. Am I allowed to do that?" And it was funny because I felt like I had to ask permission, and my producer was like, "Yeah, you can do whatever you want," and which is so indicative of kind of where I am as a person in this process. It's like, oh, and so within months I was like, yes, I can do that. I can self-title. I can have it be my name. And it feels like an evolution. It's kind of feels like a big piece of me is on this record, and so it felt right. Why it's taken 8 years was I became a mom almost 8 years ago. Actually, I found out I was pregnant 8 years ago, like last week. And so yeah, I took a season of stepping back and realizing my dream of motherhood and being present with my kids. And I'm so excited to be out in the world making music again.
So as far as that's concerned, it's quite a bit of a different sound, I think, than I was surprised when I listened to it. Surprised in a good way, because it is quite a bit of a different sound than maybe people who had heard you say at Woody Fest or who listened to your last album, which was, I think, in 2012. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of an evolution in your sound. So let's talk a little bit about how it's different.
Well, probably the biggest way that it's identifiable as different is most of my previous records were primarily based on guitar. Mm-hmm. I dabbled in a couple other instruments, but for the most part, it's just very guitar-driven, very strummy, red dirt Americana, folkish. This record is entirely written on piano. And so that in itself creates just this different bed for a sound. I co-wrote 8 of the 12 songs with my friend Dan Walker, and he's a wonderful keyboardist. And so what Dan brought to the table was just kind of a different sound. And when we collaborated, this is what we made.
And it's a totally different vibe, because besides a lot of piano basis for a lot of these songs, there's organ and there's gospel choirs and there's sort of this soulful kind of Aretha Franklin-ish kind of thing going on with it. So talk a little bit about sort of that stylistic turn.
I think that when Dan and I write together, there's just kind of a sound that happens that kind of calls on some of our influences. I love the piano pop of the 70s, and huge Carole King fan, and the world of David introduced me to Warren Zevon and Elton John, but also a little bit of gospel-y kind of thing. A lot of it is just kind of these influences from my childhood. My father's a musician. He would play me these records, and I got exposed to this amazing bed of music. And so when we approached the songs and we started to really see that we were making a whole album, we began to think about, gosh, how do these all fit together? They all kind of sound like this soulful thing. So yeah, the gospel choir was a blast, and it's one of the other differences I think I haven't really talked about much is we recorded this record live in studio, so it was very much a throwback to how the vintage records were made. So everybody's in a room together, and you're just feeling the space with each other, and it's more about performances than parts, and everybody was right there, as opposed to a modern record where you lay in every piece at a time and you have to be mindful of leaving space. In a kind of a live studio setting, they were leaving space for each other automatically and playing off one another, so you have kind of this musical conversation. So it was different in that way as well, but it was so fun to make, just because the first downbeat, your record kind of comes out of the speakers, as opposed to like 7 days of drums of hearing someone hit a snare and wondering what it was gonna sound like in the end. So that's one way that it's also different and really fun. And there's more musical performances. I think there's more instrumental spaces in these songs because I was writing with Dan, who's an instrumentalist. And, I never really thought, let's just hear me strum a while for another 16 bars. But when Dan puts his hands on the keys, he's like, yes, let's have a solo there. So some of that was just by design with writing with an instrumentalist like that.
Sure. So where did you record it and who produced it with you?
We recorded a couple different places. We recorded basic tracks live at Castle Rose Studios in Del City, Garrett Stark's place. And Garrett was really kind to let us come in, and his big Studio A was large enough for the grand piano and for all the players to be in there at once. And it also allowed me to be home by my kids and not travel away for like a month and record and come back. And Will Hunt is my producer. He's produced all my records since Orchid. And he's a fabulous friend and creative partner. And so I was happy to have him on board. This is the first time he didn't drum. He did console only and produced because of kind of all the moving parts. And so, of course, Michael Walker drummed, who we lost last year. So that was kind of a difference as well, as it doesn't have Will drumming. We recorded vocals and gospel choir and a little bit of cello, some overdubs in Fort Worth at Will's studio called Spaceway Studio. And then the string parts were done in LA.
Interesting. So as far as it goes with a process like this, themes obviously sort of emerge whenever you're working on an album like this, particularly one that's come after a lot of life changes. So what were some of the themes that sort of emerged that you really wanted to explore and put out into the world with your music?
Well, probably the biggest theme is like our humanity and different aspects of that. Connection is a huge thing, and kindness and empathy. I feel like a lot of the songs just are asking us to kind of take a look at ourselves, me included, to figure out how we can be better versions of ourselves in a world that really needs us all to kind of live up into the better parts of our nature right now. And so I didn't really set out to write a record that had like messages in it, but that's definitely what happened. And as I wrote them and as we worked into recording it, I think I became more comfortable with the idea that I was allowed to have a message. I didn't have to ask permission to say the things that I was really passionate about, which is kind of how my own emotional work paralleled the work of the record itself. And so connection, kindness, rehumanization, this idea that we are all right now in factions and sides, and we're very divided as a culture, but at the bottom of us, in the deepest spaces of us, we're the same. We share the basic human emotions, and we were talking about this before we sat down, but we each have a story. Every person we encounter has a story, and that story deserves to be heard and held. That story deserves to be honored and respected. And that story has informed where we are today and how we operate in the world, the decisions that we make, the choices that we make. And I think we would do well to learn how to hold our own stories first, because it's in knowing our own emotional humanness that we can hold the stories of others. And in holding, once we really understand ourselves, we can understand people better and offer them empathy. We can offer them kindness. We can offer them space to really say, I want to hear about your pain. I want to hear about what got you here. Because the truth is that every single one of us is always dealing with a heap of things that no one ever knows.
Sure. So talk a little bit about when the album's coming out and the release show, because you have a big release show planned at Tower Theater.
I do, and I'm feeling it. The release show is Saturday, January 25th at the Tower Theater, and I'm so excited that Chad and Steven and JB let me come do a show there. I've really enjoyed collaborating with them. What great people, that they're doing such good work. And they just welcomed me as an artist who lives here and said, yes, we want to have your show here. And I felt really honored and valued as a musician who's been doing it here, but also nationally for so long. But this is home, and so I grew up. My dad grew up in Heritage Hills, and so I grew up coming down to that area of town. And I remember seeing the Tower Theater and kind of in its closed up, boarded up version, and hearing my dad tell stories about being there and going to movies there, and so it's just a real full circle thing for me to get to go bring a show there. So Saturday, January 25th, we'll be there pulling out all the stops. We have the gospel choir, we have strings, we have Dan Walker on keys, John Fulbright is sitting in on Hammond organ, so he's going to make a little hidden appearance in the band. Raul Alfonso, Trent Austin is taking Mike's seat at the drums to honor his dear friend, and Isaac Stallings on guitar. And so it's going to be a fantastic night. It's an evening with, so there's no opener. We're just going to bring it, and it's going to be so fun. I'm really, really excited. So that's the show, and then the record comes out worldwide on all platforms on February 7th, on Friday.
It's very exciting times.
It is.
A lot going on with that, so it's going to be a great show. So where can people get more information about your music if they want to look up how to get this album?
CaseyClifford.com, and there's a pre-order available now. So if you're like, I want to get my hands on that before everyone else, feel free to go pre-order. And I'm on Spotify, and I'll tell you what happens when you step away for 8 years before Spotify was really a thing, and then you emerge 8 years later, and you're like, oh, I should be on Spotify. So please follow me on Spotify if I'm allowed to ask, because it's a sad place. And, I think we all want like the 45-year-old woman, like victory story. Like, I think we all want to be like, that girl's going to have a comeback, and I'm going to go follow that stuff on Spotify. So there's a couple singles that are already up on Spotify,
sure,
but would love some love there.
And one of them is Salt, the one that you guys came in and performed in our studio today that people get to listen to.
It is.
Yeah, very exciting. And obviously, you guys can look for more information in the Oklahoman on Oklahoman.com. We'll have a video and a feature about Casey and the album release. And thanks for coming in today. I really do appreciate it. It's good to see you again, and good to see you making new music.
Thank you, Brandy. Thanks for having me.
Peace, may you know it well, what the road will bring, only time will tell. Oh, and hope, let it be your guide. Hear your own sweet song welling up inside, and may there be such love among you. When one of you cries, the other takes hold, and let the threads of kindness bind you. May you choose tenderness instead of finding fault. And trust, don't you be afraid, though the darkness comes, so the day will break. Oh, believe that you are enough, that you're worth the time, that you can rise above, and may there be such love among you. When one of you cries, the other takes hold, and let the threads of kindness bind you. May you choose tenderness instead of finding fault. And may you have eyes to see that every soul's a common ground. Break each one open, and there's all this beauty to be found. Yeah. And may there be such love among you.